Hi, sixth graders and sixth grade parents. This video is really going to be explaining all about self-paced learning. Our classroom is going to kind of have a shift in how the students are getting their information and going through their units. So I really kind of wanted to bring you as the parents on board. The students have already gotten an explanation of this in class, but like I said, I really want you kind of to know what's going on just because this might be different from what you experienced as a student. Self-paced is growing in popularity with teachers, so your students might have already kind of participated in a classroom that's similar to this, but I wanted to make sure that we were all on the same page. So what you'll see is I have my Google Classroom set up here on the page right now. If you haven't had a chance to check this out yet, I would really suggest having your student pull this up and share with you what I all have posted on here. This is just a wealth of information. So what you can see, this is the stream, and I tell the students not to even pay attention to this because it's a little bit messy. Where we look over here are all of the topics, and then even if there's anything due that I put a due date on, it also lists those over here in a to-do list for the students as well. But what we're going to be working on, our unit that we're going to be starting self-paced with is all on measuring matter. So when the students click on here, they'll see that the first thing that they have is a to-do list. So this is really everything that they have to do for the entire unit. And on here, it seems like a lot of information, but we kind of break it down. You'll see that the activities that I have them doing are very typical activities that you would see in a traditional classroom. The biggest change is that students are going to get a chance to work through these at their own pace. So I find that this works really well for a lot of the students, simply because if you have a student that works quickly through content, masters things, and doesn't need a lot of support, they can move through this and they're not sitting bored in class where I'm still doing all of the reinforcement. Or if you have a student that it really takes a longer time to master that content and needs a lot of reinforcement, they have the time to go through this and really master it, as opposed to just kind of pushing through with either okay grades or maybe even failing grades. So looking here, you'll see we're still going to do video notes, which students have already been doing these for homework for me. Now they're just going to do them in class. And then I still have diagrams for them to be filling out, and we'll still be doing investigations and labs. And so students are still going to get the opportunity to work in partnerships or in small groups to complete these labs. The grouping is just going to be a little bit more flexible and based on their timing that they're going through these lists. You'll also see as well on here that I do give checkpoints. So while the students are working, what I'm doing is I'm either conferencing one-on-one with students or I'm offering small group. So at the start of the day, I might ask a question about, similar to like, is anybody confused on any content? And so then I might pull all of those students that have a similar struggle together, and we might sit and discuss for 10 minutes the issues that they're having. Students can request a one-on-one conference at any time, and I find that those are very valuable as well because we can address those questions right away. And usually the conferences are very short, but it gets the misconception fixed, and the students are ready then to continue learning. I do put in checkpoints. You'll see step 8, it says that they have to conference with me. They're usually bringing some of the work that they've worked on in the steps above, and we go through that. Sometimes these will be one-on-one. Sometimes I'll group them together in a small group to talk about this information as well. And then at the end of the to-do list, these will be similar steps for every single section. They will always have to take a Check Your Understanding, which they've already been doing that for me, and you will see that that's always posted in Progress Book for you. It is not technically part of their grade. I put it in weighted as a 0, but I like you to be able to see what they're doing in class and how they're progressing. So if you want us to help them study at home, I would highly suggest having them pull up that Check Your Understanding so you can see what content that they're still struggling with. So after they take their understanding independently, they come back and we do have a one-on-one conference, and we'll go over that check their understanding and a few of their objective reflection form pieces as well, which I'll pull up an objective reflection form for you to look at here in a second. And we make that decision whether or not they're ready to take their assessment. So in this case, it would be a quiz on this section. For this, we are really kind of changing the look of what their agenda book might look like. You are no longer going to see quiz on November 21st or 24th. We're not all taking the quizzes at the same time. So students, once they get down to this step, we make that decision on a one-on-one basis when they're ready to take their quiz. So I have students consistently quizzing throughout. And then if they score a 70% or higher, they are allowed to move on to the next to-do list. If they score below a 70%, it's going to be an automatic retake. So I will still have them fill out the retake reflection forms and have you sign them, just so that you're kind of aware of what's going on in class. However, they might actually retake that form or retake that quiz before you even see the form, because if there's just a few small issues, they might be able to address those in class that day and then retake the next day. So that is still, retakes are still in place and they're still going on, but the pace at which they're happening, we're not going to have a set date for those. Then I did want to show you the objective reflection form. So what this really does is this is a guide for the students to see all of the things that they have to be able to master throughout this section. So you can see, like, for the first few, they have to be able to define a few different terms. They have to explain how mass and weight are affected by location. Then we're talking about the different tools that we're using to measure matter. And then they actually have to be able to use those tools and measure matter for both mass and volume. And what you'll see across here then, we have, I always pre-assess the students, and so they'll fill out a number. Down at the bottom, these are my point system. And the point systems, you'll see that they're either going to be a 1-point question or a 4-point question. So if we look at 4.11, for example, determine the volume of an irregular solid object. This is a problem that's a little bit higher level thinking. It requires them to do multi-step problem and solve for that volume. So this would be a 4-point question, and it can be on a range. So if they get 0, that just means that they are not there yet. 1, they might have been able to show me just the start of a thought process and how to correctly find the volume of an irregular solid object. 2 is they're progressing a little bit farther, but there's still some major issues with their problem. 3 out of 4 would be that they just made one small mistake. Maybe they forgot their units, or they put the incorrect units on there. Maybe they didn't show their formula work correctly. And then a 4 would be that they've mastered it, so they have that problem solved perfectly. And then you can see that my 1-point problems are usually either problems that either you have it mastered or you don't have it mastered yet. So a lot of those terms, like either you can define a term or you can't, or you can list something or you can't. So it's very just black and white for those 1-point questions. So it will always have those points listed behind the I can statement so that students know, and then I have it listed down here what those point values mean. So you'll see numbers listed through their pre-assessment. The self-assessment column should update. We kind of update it just kind of sporadically throughout the unit. I'll have them come in at the start of class and their bell work might be, okay, self-assess today on your I can statements. So we're hoping that those will be changing throughout the section, and then before they take their quiz, hopefully, you know, they think that they have all of those mastered. Then they'll also take the Check Your Understanding, because we know that 6th graders aren't always great at self-assessing yet. So the Check Your Understanding is really that last step where they have to be able to prove on an assessment whether or not they actually have that mastered or not. So it's always interesting to kind of look and see where they've self-assessed at and where their actual Check Your Understanding was. And again, the Check Your Understanding isn't for a grade, even though it's an assessment. It's really, we call it a formative assessment. So you'll see that form on Progress Book, and that's just showing, okay, we're forming an opinion right now as to whether or not the students actually mastered it. So they're not penalized, but I do want you to be able to see their progress on that. And then they'll take their quiz and they'll fill it out. So it's very interesting to always look for that growth from the pre-assessment to the quiz, and then the growth in between with the self-assessment, and check your understanding as well. And then eventually, once we've covered all of the necessary sections for a unit, each unit's a little bit different with how many sections it's actually broken down into, the students will then be tested over it again with a unit test. And so it's always really interesting to see, are they retaining that mastery, or did they just master it for 5 minutes and then just kind of moved on? So we see usually how that quiz to the unit test compares. And then throughout the year as well, and the students are made aware of this, they will, on unit tests coming in the future, they might still be pulled a few objectives from measuring matter or science skills, and so they'll document how they do there. So really testing for retention, 4 or 5 months down the road. So this is the objective reflection form. Students can pull it up for you at any time. It is in their Google Classroom. If you're wondering how they're doing in class, that might be a good place to go and check out. And then just kind of ending back here on our to-do list, one big question that I always have, is how do you make sure that students are staying up? Because we don't want students to get too far behind. I want them to get through and get exposed to all of the 6th grade content. So what I do is on my whiteboard, I will actually list goals for the students. And we say that you want to stay within 2 days of those goals. So to help students stay up on that, if they're not at goal, I will assign homework for them. So this is where it becomes very personalized as well. Not everybody's going to be getting assigned the same homework on the same night. I kind of go around with a clipboard and keep track that way. So checking agenda books is really, really important at this point. It's next to impossible for me to really post the homework on Moodle. I try my best to kind of post where large groups might be, but agenda books are going to be very, very important at this point. And then other than the goals, if I do have students that get farther behind, I do work with them and we kind of prioritize the important pieces on the to-do list. Some of these steps are extensions, and that kind of, we use an extension to extend the students' thinking and really kind of push them to a higher level. So if a student really is struggling, I might take away some of those extensions just to help them get the basic content that we really need them to focus on. I really welcome any questions or concerns that you may have even as we're going on through the year. Please feel free to email me or call me. I'm more than happy to answer any questions. I know that this was a lot of information all up front. So please let me know if you have any questions, and thank you for watching.